Thank you for welcoming us into your headphones. I am Chema.
And I'm Alex, reviewing Before Sunrise, and this is the rollback.
On his way to Vienna, American Jesse meets Celine, a student returning to Paris. After long conversations forge a surprising connection between them, Jesse convinces Celine to get off the train with him in Vienna. Since his flight to the US departs the next morning and he has no money for lodging, they wander the city together, taking in the experience of Vienna and each other. What's up, Alex?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on this movie.
Really?
One of the trends, I suppose, that I've noticed with our director here, Richard Linklater,
One of my favorites.
is that he's got a real talent for ambiguity, I would say, for multiple interpretations of characters, of giving no clear answer to the audience as to what a person really is or what their motivations truly are. You can kind of see that in Dazed and Confused. There's a lot of ambiguity about the practices in that movie, the traditions that are a central point. You can see that in A Scanner Darkly. There's a lot of ambiguity surrounding the plot and the ethics of what's going on. Here, of course, this is kind of a very intensely focused, very personal drama. The ambiguity, in my opinion, is all about the characters. It's all about our main two, Jesse and Celine. And in my mind, kind of a bit more about Jesse. It took me, I don't know, I went back and forth a lot as to his character in particular.
Interesting. Let's give a little bit of background to the movie before we start fighting on our opinions on this one, because I think it's gonna be a you came out kicking. That's a hot take. I love Linklater. I love his movies. And I think the thing that mostly inspired me to want to review the Before trilogy was hearing you and Fernie talk about Dazed and Confused and talking about all the history of Linklater. Fernie and I talked a little bit about Linklater when we did Booksmart. And this guy, I agree that ambiguity plays a big part in a lot of his projects. I think specifically movies like Scanner Darkly and what was that rotoscope one?
That was A Scanner Darkly.
No, but he did another one that was also animated and it was also rotoscoped.
That one I'm not sure of then.
Waking Life. That's the one.
Oh, of course, right.
Yeah.
Right, and I should have known because Waking Life actually has these two main characters in it.
Oh yeah, it's got a little cameo from them. I think those movies specify on ambiguity. I think when you watch a movie like School of Rock, you can see that that's probably his most different film, because it doesn't really connect with all these other ones. Though that one's, I think, way more focused on what it wants to be.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and then you have the Before trilogy, which is has been his ongoing project. I don't know if they'll make another one, but Jesus, I think we deserve one. I mean, there's still time.
We're coming up on it. There are intervals of 9 years. We could see where Jesse and Celine are to this day.
Yeah, it's likely. My thing with this movie is I was watching an interview with Ethan Hawke, and he was talking about how the project came up and how it started to work. And something that I didn't know until I watched that interview was that him and Celine, Julie Delphi, they received the script and then they kind of reworked it. They pretty much took it as a okay, I'm not sure Jesse would say this, I'm not sure Celine would say this, and then they just kind of started going back and forth, and they kind of not rewrote the script but kind of reworked it for them. And they didn't get any kind of credit for it on this one. The script is just credit to Richard Linklater and to this other writer, Kim Krasan. But when it came to the other two sequels, they are credited for those, because
which does make sense.
Yeah,
right. That's I would say a lot of Linklater's success. I mean, Fernie had mentioned on Dazed and Confused exactly how much of the movie was chemistry on the part of the cast that had developed naturally, and that will happen on a film set. It has happened here. I mean, you hear stories of Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy saying that, part of it was improv, part of it was, things that we thought our characters would do. Obviously, that's contributing a good bit to this film and to the interplay between the two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you ever heard the story that inspired the movie?
No, that I haven't.
Okay, this is one of my favorite. This is why I love movies for stories like this. So apparently, like Linklater, when he was in his 20s, he spent like kind of the same thing that happened in the movie. He spent it with this girl called Amy, but they were in Philadelphia, and he kind of like had to spend like a whole night. And he also met a girl there, and they kind of started talking and stuff. But they actually did stay in contact for a little bit until eventually they just didn't have contact anymore. And he started writing. He became a director. He started to work on movies, and then he made Before Sunrise, inspired on this thing that happened. And he also did it kind of like as okay, maybe I'll do this. Maybe she'll see it, and maybe she'll want to try to talk again. Maybe we can pick up where we left off or something. He made a movie. Movie came out. He hears nothing about this girl, and he's like, "Oh, okay, fine." So like years pass. He does Before Sunset. Also hears nothing, and it's like, "Damn it! Like, where is she?" Like, so the movie comes out. And he's like, "Oh, where is she?" Like, damn it! And like years go by, and then a year before Midnight comes out, he gets he gets a letter from this woman that was friends with that Amy girl, and he tells her like, "Hey, I was friends with this girl Amy that she told me the story of you two, and then I saw the movie, and I thought that might, and I kind of put the names together and figured it out and stuff." And Linklater is like, "Oh my God, like, where is she? Like, can I talk to her?" And this girl tells him like, "Oh, she died in a motorcycle accident, like the year before Sunrise comes out. So she never sees the movie."
That's something. Have you ever been such a simp that you made a Hollywood motion picture for a girl?
I don't think he made it like she'll find it and we'll get married and stuff. I think he just made it like it'd be nice to catch up or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but still, I mean, to me that's like a sad story. But if you Linklater, you're a simp. Okay, we'll just.
Well, I think no. I mean, of course, it is a sad story, but I think that having a laugh at a bit of sadness is perhaps in keeping with the tone of this film. I mean, we see a couple of times Jesse and Celine take a little bit of lighthearted jabs at some of the more weighty subjects in life.
Yeah, which is kind of the whole reason why the movie works. I mean, here you have two characters, both incredibly well educated, incredibly young, very like moldable. They're just at the most, I'll just say, at the most pretentious time in their lives, and they're both in a situation where they get to be absolutely who they want to be because they don't have the pressure of the people that they already know there for them. So I think anyone at any point has been in a similar situation than them, and the reaction that we would act on would also be very similar, which is why I think this movie just works. You have these two people that are free to kind of do whatever they want for a full night, and both self-aware that it's going to end. And I think it allows them to know, and it's not a movie that eventually becomes like a big party or a big action set piece. It's just a movie of just the two of them talking. And it's definitely not for everyone, but it definitely is for people like me. I love this kind of movies. I love movies where they put the plot in the backseat and they put dialogue and character at the front. I am a sucker for these kinds of movies. So when I first saw the trilogy, it kind of gave me like a new way of, you can do movies like this. It gave me the same feel kind of when I first saw Clerks by Kevin Smith or Lady Bird by Greta Gerwig. Movies like Frances Ha by Neil, what's his name? Bachman, I think was his last name. Noah Bachman, yeah. Movies like that just kind of work on the strength of the dialogue and the main characters are some of my favorites. And this one I think is just one of those comfort movies that you can watch and not really think about, not care about the plot. You just watching two very interesting people just being interesting around each other.
Well, I agree that there are definitely a lot of relatable parts to this. I mean, you can see why they act the way that they do. You can be, in a lot of ways, the most honest to someone that you're never going to see again, because obviously there are no consequences, right? I mean, there's not, any repercussions that are going to happen in the future from you talking and being honest and frank about your thoughts, because, he's going to get on his plane, she's going to get on his train the next day. Yeah. And that will be the end of it. And it does lead to a lot of honest discussion. To be frank, though, I'm not certain how interesting I found it. I mean, a lot of the dialogue, and you're correct, I mean, the dialogue is at the forefront of the movie, right? It's all character, it's all of them talking. Mm-hmm. But I would say that it's kind of dated in my eyes. It just seems kind of passé. I mean, they're two people who are just being introspective and being very cynical. I feel like I've seen that before. I feel like this is kind of a 90s time capsule in that way.
It is very 90s, yeah. From the fashion to the music to a lot of the things that even the things that they're talking about. I mean, if you played 90s bingo on this movie, you could almost win. The only thing that they don't mention is Y2K, but other than that, everything's kind of here. Everything's here.
Well, yeah, and then there's the there's I want to say that classic, almost like 90s nihilism, if you will. They don't really stand for anything or believe in anything. Celine will at various points say that she doesn't really believe in religion, but she also doesn't believe in feminism either, really. They're both just kind of skeptical of any concept that comes their way, just more or less for skepticism's sake.
Yeah, and that's why there was in that same interview that I saw with Ethan Hawke, they were talking about how they were like 2-3 days into filming, and Julie kind of like turns to Ethan and goes like, "We're making the shittiest movie in the world. Like, it's just two people talking," and they're like, "Who the fuck is gonna want to see this?" And then because they're honest, they just go to Linklater and they're like, "Hey, question, who the fuck is gonna want to see this?" And he just goes like, how to say it? He said, if someone doesn't want to see a movie about two people just walking and talking, then we're not doing it for them, But but I believe there's an audience for people for a movie like this, or at least that's the movie that I want to see, that I want to do. And I don't know, you know the rule about directors that like one for me, one for them. Like I gotta do like a I think Linklater takes that as a jump rope and says, nope, fuck it. This is why he doesn't live in LA. He still lives in Austin. He's just so separated from a lot of things, and his movies bomb. Like, these movies don't do a lot of money, but for some reason people keep coming back to them. I mean, they're still a big audience to them. And while I do agree that there's a nihilism and that there's two there, I don't know if everything here is specifically done to set up a second and a third one. But after rewatching the third one and watching the first one again, I can see a lot of holes that were closed, that were pretty much gravelled on.
Right. And it's always great to see that, all the development in the story.
Yeah, one of the first conversations that Ethan and that Jesse and Celine have are when he's trying to convince her to get off the train. He tells him, like, imagine that this is time travel, and you're going back to the past and thinking about all the guys that you could have been with, and instead you're with your boring husband. Like, this could be one of those. Spoilers for Before Midnight, but the last scene in Before Midnight is just the two of them trying to talk after a big fight, and him telling him, like, keep trying to comfort her by saying, like, hi, I'm a time traveler from that time. I'm me from, like, the time where you got off the train. Like, I'm here to remind you or why you got off the train with me and all that. And like I said, I don't know if that was set up. Obviously, probably not. But I don't know. There's a lot of what they're saying and what they're talking about that definitely fit the time, definitely fit the groove of what they're talking about. And to me, at least, that's not a bad thing. I think I think time capsules are good in a way. And it does time the movie, but in a way, I can see the movie now, and the only question that my dumb 2010s brain is asking is, oh my God, there's no cell phones here. Yeah.
Well, let me say that I don't disagree with the initial point. Not that they're making the shittiest movie ever, but that there's an audience for movies like this. I mean, I myself, I don't mind movies that are dialogue heavy, movies that are about like drama and the interactions between people. I mean, you could argue that that's like what Casablanca is. Her is a movie like that. Steve Jobs is a movie like that. My main thing, if you're going to, make a movie in that style, well, then obviously you have a lot riding on the characters. You want to make them interesting. And when I'm seeing this movie, when it comes across as dated, it's because I feel like I've seen these two before. And this was my first time viewing the movie, but I could kind of tell them fairly quickly. I mean, even the whole act of getting off the train and spending a night together, right? That has to be at its core, an adventure of sorts, right? To break off your plans and to go with this stranger. It is very romantic. But Ethan Hawke's rationale, basically saying that, your life is going to be shitty in the future, so you should have the shitty experience with me now so that you can, not take the future for granted. I mean, it's all very cynical, but to my view, a pointless way. And we see that that's sort of just Jesse all over. I mean, there's not really something that can happen in the movie without him criticizing it in some regard. Whether that's, the palm reader, the dance, pretty much anything, except him getting the bottle of wine later on, is going to have him saying, okay, but you know why they're really doing that, right?
Yeah. And that's and I completely agree. That's his character, and that's how he portrays him. But I don't know. There's like a part of me that finds that also like a little bit charming, not in a I don't know what's the right way to put it. I don't know. It's just that I don't know. It's kind of hard to describe, but I've met people who are like that, and that can get really old very, very quick. But you got to see it also from the other perspective. Earlier, you mentioned something very interesting, which is that you felt like Jesse was the main character, that you felt like you're seeing everything through his eyes and everything.
Well, I'm not certain that I would say that he was the main character.
Okay.
Just that
the focus,
I was kind of going back and forth on his motivations a lot.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, because I've talked with a couple of girls that like the movie, that have seen the movie, and we see it in very different ways. Because in a way, whether I want to or not, I will always see it from Jesse's perspective. They were telling me that, we see it from Celine's perspective, and we feel like this is good, this is nice, this is that, and like I said, there's not really a bad flow going on. It's just these two people that are kind of talking. And this movie at least gave me like when I first saw it, I was younger. I was like probably like 20, 21. And it gave me like a terrible, terrible expectation of things. I'm a perpetually single person. And I'm very open about that. But Jesus Christ, the scene when Jesse and Celine are in the record store and they're in the listening room and they're standing next to each other and that song is playing and one of them looks at the other and the other one looks away, like for like 2 seconds, I believe in love. It's like it does something, it causes a reaction. And I think in the end, that is the purpose of the movie, is just to cause a reaction. Like, hey, take a look at these two people. They're just kind of chilling. And in a way, and I don't know. The movie ends, and it kind of, and I do you remember that movie Wanted with Professor X?
I've never seen Wanted.
Okay, so the movie ends with like him like pointing a gun to this person and him like narrating what he's gonna do, and he's like, "I'm gonna kill this person. I'm gonna do this," and then the movie ends horribly. It just ends with him looking at the screen and says like, "What the fuck have you done today?" You know, and I feel like before Sunrise ends and it looks at and the black screen comes up reflecting me to the screen like, "Look at you, fat fucking slub. Look at these two beautiful people. Aren't you just jealous?" And I hate that, but I love that. And I love this movie because of it makes me feel that way.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up the listening booth. I mean, because
Yeah.
that's another just like classic '90s thing. And I'm not going to say that feels
Absolutely,
dated,
absolutely.
that feels more vintage to me. I mean, it's pretty cool. But that their interaction during that scene, I didn't necessarily think that it was, charming in that way. I thought it was kind of more awkward. I mean, there's these two people who are interested in each other, right? Tentatively, because this is fairly early on in the movie.
They're curious about each other.
Of course, right. Curious enough to, go off together into the strange city.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like, darting around the room, not really meeting each other's gaze. It reminded me of like being in an elevator with someone. Because what are you going to do in a listening room when like this really, really over the top love song is playing? And it's obvious that, I mean, there are these implications to be drawn, that's the connection there. But you've met this person like 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
I thought the same thing about their initial conversation, that it was just kind of awkward, that their interplay wasn't that great. And I felt that that wasn't the case for the entirety of the movie, but for a lot of it, I was thinking like, these two aren't necessarily good together. They're just looking for another person to talk to about themselves.
Yeah.
Almost, they'll encounter something and they'll say, you know what my opinion on this is? And they just want to, it reminds me of that John Mulaney skit, where he's doing his stand-up and he's saying, conversations are just you waiting your turn to talk. It's just the other person going, talk. In a second, you're like, I'm going to be talking soon. That's these two. And I want to say that I don't think that's poor writing. I think that that's true to life kind of at that age and for these people.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that I don't believe that it's great chemistry.
Okay. Blasphemy, but okay. No. I understand that, but it's just that it's kind of hard to not compare it to real life. I mean, I don't think all movies and all characters should be relatable. I don't think so. However, a movie like this that's trying to just portray and kind of mirror real life, it's not trying to get you to believe anything. It's just a movie that's trying to. It's kind of like that movie Lady Bird, where it doesn't feel like you're watching actors. It feels like you're just watching people just do people things. And just like the two main actors said, that may be very boring. But to me, I mean, I've been on dates that feel exactly like that booth scene where you're just kind of standing next to each other, like thinking like, should I talk? Do they talk? Is this awkward? Is this good? Is this bad? Do I do something? Do I not do something? Because they don't do anything. They just kind of stand next to each other, and then the next scene they're just walking outside. And
right.
And yeah, awkwardness is kind of part of the whole date part. It's kind of a package deal. It comes with it. It's included. It's like spicy ketchup. You want more, you'll get more. It's just always there. But to me, that's kind of a good thing. If they portray this wonderful love story in one night and there's not one awkward moment, it's kind of boring, which is why the third movie in this trilogy kind of fits so perfectly, and it's kind of exactly what you need after watching the first two.
And the thing of it is, though, is that I would say it's a matter of degrees, right?
Yeah.
So, having not one awkward moment, unrealistic, obviously. But I do want at some point to relate to them in some way. I want them to have, a chemistry that draws me in. I want to believe that hey, maybe there is something more going on than just like two self-interested 20-somethings happening to meet and finding each other attractive. I get that toward the end, but throughout most of it, I think that it's mostly awkward, and there's not too much drawing me in, to their relations. It's just like, oh, okay, well, we're going to have another story that's just him talking about himself, or just her talking about herself, or they're going to be like, there are times where I wouldn't say they quite lie to each other, but they definitely, in my mind, misrepresent the truth.
Yeah, definitely.
Wherein, for instance, he talks about, them having a connection right off the bat. To me, at least with the way that Ethan Hawke played it, I didn't find that convincing. I thought, okay, he's
That's
just trying to get laid. Yeah,
that's a line.
which Julie Delpy will, respond to later in the movie.
Yeah.
Or when Celine, for instance, talks about the fact that, her ex left her because she was too interested, and she claims that, she was doing him a favor, that she wasn't interested at all. There's something missing there. It's just, to me, it's a lot of two selfish people, and I don't really see them as being all that great together. Now, some, entertaining stuff does happen. I'm not going to just be trashing the movie. Of particular note was the play that they got invitations to.
They didn't even go to the play.
I would have loved to see that. I wish we were reviewing that play right now, let me tell you. Russians, cows, Mexicans, politicians. What more could there ever be to life?
That's one of my favorite lines in the movie, when they go like, oh my God, we didn't go to the play.
Because they met the cow. They met the lead cow.
Yeah. Oh God.
Yeah.
I would have liked, so, I want like a little, if they do a fourth one, I want a callback of that. I want them like in their 50s, just like them bumping into the actors from the play. I'm like, hey, you guys didn't come to the play.
Oh, no, I want them to go to an opera house where they're having a full performance of the play.
Oh God!
Which has become a Viennese cultural phenomenon.
And just the two of them, just like, oh my God, we missed it. Like we could have been, and we missed the play. Oh God. Yeah. A couple of things I wanted to mention. When you were talking about the twisting of the truth, which I think is absolutely correct, but you got to remember something. The history is always told from the winner's side.
Definitely.
Let me give you a quick example. When I first came to college in the U.S. To the university that I think we all went to, and I had to take this Texas history class. And in that class, they were like, so this is Santa Anna. He was Mexico's president, and he very kindly gave us all this territory, which is now Texas. And I'm like, I learned this story differently.
Oh, see, I never heard that we were given anything. I always were like, we took that shit.
Yeah, which is why the first time I went to the Alamo, I was just looking at that like, you motherfuckers, like, damn it. You want Texas back? Come get it. We ganked it. Yeah. So yeah,
America says the same thing every year to the Navajo and the Hopi. you want it back? Here we are.
So yeah, history is in Celine's to her benefit, history will always be told from the winner's side. And we've all heard that line, like, oh, they didn't like that I cared too much. Bullshit. We saw the third movie. So the other part is so yeah, look, there's the chemistry that they have, because they do have chemistry, and it's a little bit awkward, and there's some things that if you try to put yourself and relate to them when in that scene, there are things that I don't know for you, but some of them would be not a deal breaker, but it will definitely make things slower during the night. For example, there's a scene where they're walking into this graveyard for some odd reason, and they're walking to this graveyard, and she's telling this story about how she went there like 10 years ago when she was 13, and she sees this grave marked with the name of a girl that was also 13 years old, and she says like, 10 years ago, I was looking at the grave, and it was my age, and now I'm 10 years older, and she's still the same age. And Jesse's like, oh my God, nice. And to me, that's like, okay, that would, because like from there we moved to the scene where they're in the amusement park and they kiss for the first time. And if I was Jesse in that situation, that kiss would have taken like at least another hour, like another several scenes. He would have been probably after the palm reader, just because of how awkward that would have made me feel. I remember. Here's another story. When I was a freshman in the same university, I was living in the dorms, and because of that, the only people that I knew from school were the people that also lived in the dorms. And there was this girl that I found really, very attractive. So we kind of like bump into each other sometimes in the dorms, and we're in the dining hall, and I kind of bump into her, and she bumps into me, and she's like, "Hey, are you by yourself?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm by myself." And she's like, "Can I sit with you?" And I'm like, "Fuck yeah!" And here I am thinking like, "Oh, nice." And we're kind of sitting there, and it's awkward, and it's quiet, and it's horrible. And I don't know where she just tells me like, "My grandma just died." And I don't know what to tell her, so I want to be empathetic. I'm like, "Oh, were you too close?" And she tells me, "No."
Then why did you bring it up to a perfect stranger?
I don't know, and to this day, I don't know. And
something to talk about, I guess.
And I just went like, okay, all right. All right.
Wait, that's not what this podcast is.
No.
Is it? Are you a Richard Linklater? Are you trying to reconnect with this lady?
No, we still talk sometimes, but we're still friends. Great. We're still friends. But like, that was like the first time we like talk one-on-one, like not without a group or with an RA telling us like, all right, Mengo. But yeah, up to this. So when I first saw the movie and I saw that scene, I'm like, oh, that felt familiar, and that would have also like pushed like, yeah, I don't know, this ain't it, Chief. You know, this just ain't it.
Sure. Yeah. But I would say to that I mean, I think that you who had to live in the dorms and like know this person, right, for some period of time,
still do,
and well, you know, and Jesse, who's, you know, going to be out of the continent by the next day.
Yeah.
I think there's different aims going on. I think Jesse's just kind of being a hound, right? He's going to say whatever he has to say at this point. And I'm not going to say that that's like the entirety of his character. No. I do think it changes, but I just think that here, more or less at the beginning, he's like, oh, yeah, that's really deep. Yeah, the cemetery. She's always giving me 13. Anyway, let's go to the fair.
You want to go to the fair? Yeah, that you bring up a super interesting point. But at the end of the movie, these two characters don't really change. They kind of stay the same. It's not until we see them 9 years later where, yeah, they have changed quite a bit. But in a way, they haven't. Yeah. Go ahead.
I think you might be able to debate that.
Okay.
At least as far as like their decision on staying in touch goes, right? Because at the beginning, I think they're both trying to show off a little bit. I think Jesse's trying to show off, like, you know, I'm mature. I've seen it all. I think Selena's doing the same thing. And that's why they say, you know, yeah, of course, long distance never works. You know, you write once or twice and then nothing happens. I think that you could say that they either change their minds near the end, right? Because this sort of like passion for the other draws out, I guess, some hope, right? Maybe. Or else they were thinking that the whole time and they just kind of stopped hiding it.
Yeah.
Because the interesting thing that I think about the two of them, and this is where I'll say, you know, these are realistic characters. There's something to study with them, is that in some ways they're opposites from one another. They're both they both come across as kind of jaded, and they both have some love of like poetry. But in some other ways, you know, they're the opposite. Several times Celine will say like, oh, I actually, you know, believe the opposite of that. And it's kind of about them finding enough common ground to sort of sustain the night, and then later on their hope for, you know, maybe something more.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just they're like I said, they're trying to find common ground to kind of like exist around each other. Because yeah, I mean, they're.
Well, he has.
Go ahead.
Well, he has what is on paper a sad life, right? Like he says, I was a mistake, and my parents hated each other.
Yeah.
They argued about me in front of me,
Mhm.
and yet he says that eventually he took pride in it. And I don't think that he's lying about that. I mean, I think that's just his mannerisms. Um, Whereas she, on the other hand, she mentions several times that her parents are very loving and supportive, and anytime that she has like a career interest, they try to support it in their own way. Um, so on paper, she has a happy life, but she's still sad about it. She at one point says, "I really can't complain about anything," and in my notes I wrote, "And yet you're going to," because in temperament, they do have a lot of differences, but it's just interesting to see, how they can keep it together.
Yeah. Yeah, and how do I fucking put this? I don't know, the way that they go back and forth, especially in that scene at the fair, right after they kiss, where they're just talking, and I like how after that scene, it's they kind of gain like a little bit of, if not trust, at least comfort with each other, where they can kind of start to poke at each other. Because immediately after they kiss and they start to talk, he tells a story about his family. She tells a story about her family, and she talks about her grandma, how she's married to this man, and how to her, like, she was always like in love with this other guy that she met when she was younger, but she just kind of gave up and just decided to stay with this other guy. He immediately like
She
pokes to
accepted her
that.
fate.
Yeah, and then he immediately pokes out to that, and it's like, he's like, I would have guaranteed you that she wouldn't have been happy, and that she would have just been happy for like a little bit. And she's visibly like upset at that. She very deadpan tells him, like, how do you know? You don't know them. And
Right.
and if you've been in a situation like that, because it happens, you sometimes are with someone that you're trying to watch everything you say, and then you say something that comes out of line, and when they deadpan you, you just go like, fuck, like I screwed up.
You're in a church in Austria. It's midnight. You don't know what you're gonna do.
Nice. Giggity.
But no, there definitely is that reaction from him. And actually, it's interesting that we bring up the church because, like I said, I think that Jesse in particular starts off the movie kind of completely self-interested. Celine, I think, is a little more invested in like the actual connection from the get-go. Mm-hmm. But in the church, I think is where I think I start seeing the turning point there, because he asks her, "Are you close with your grandmother?"
Yeah.
And that seemed to me a question that's like not what were your first sexual feelings, or like something to help him out. Yeah. I think that was him being, the start of being genuine.
Yeah. Same question I asked that girl from the dining hall.
Oh dear. Yeah. Oh no.
It's marked. Yeah. No. What I was gonna say on the previous scene was that when she calls him out on that, he goes he says, like, well, I just don't think people like can be like happy with that with someone else, or something, we do like romantic projection on things. And she immediately calls him out. She's like, "Oh yeah, romantic projection. You, Mister, look at the sunset. Look at we're in the Ferris wheel. Like yeah. I think that's the moment where she starts to start to poke at him, and then immediately the scene that follows at the church is when he starts to like take down his walls a little bit and starts to like, I think, trying to hear her instead of just waiting for her to end so he can keep talking.
Sure. And I've said it a couple of times that I think Celine is the more maybe like the more engaged romantic of the two. Yeah. But that doesn't mean to say that she's like gullible at all. She kind of has this guy's number, like from the beginning, where she's like, okay, but it's strange where you see, he obviously knew what he wanted from the start. She could kind of read him very well from the start, but you see that it morphed into something real along the way, which is why I really enjoy the church scene, as well as the two other ones. One from the very beginning, where you have the older German couple who are married, and they argue. They go into the lounge car, they come back all the way back through theirs. And there's a nice bit of symbolism where Jesse and Celine, this is how they get to talking, he invites her to the lounge car where the married couple has just gone. It's a nice symbolism to show that, they're going down the same path.
Yeah.
And then later on, when they're in the restaurant within Vienna itself, they have the imaginary phone conversations. I really liked that moment. I thought that was a way to become, to really, knock down even more walls. They kind of show each other, this is what I think of, quote unquote him, or what I think of her when they're talking to their imaginary best friends on the telephone to each other.
Yeah, you're right. That scene is just really good. I think that scene mirrors very well the scene from where they're in the bus and they start to do like that little question and answer game where he immediately jumps to sex, she immediately jumps to love, and then they keep going like back and forth on that. Now that you mentioned symbolism, it's kind of nice how in the bus they're kind of sitting next to each other, and then in the restaurant they're face to face. They're kind of sitting like in front where they really cannot hide or look away. Like they must face each other. And
Sure.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's kind of like I've always had this weird thing where anytime I see couples in booths and they're sitting in the same side, I always find that's not awkward. That you cannot be comfortable there.
Oh, really?
I never find that comfortable. Like hey, we got this huge open seat in front of us, and you just decide to sit next to
by themselves.
Yeah, by themselves. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I understand that.
But in front of each other, there's nothing to hide. You have to look like in the front at some point instead of like to the side. And I don't know. I like that. I like that scene. I like the imaginary conversation. I like the scene with the poet when they're walking.
I was about to say, absolutely, yeah, the poet.
Oh God, the scene with the poet. It brings one of my favorite Jesse lines, which is after he offers to write the poem for them, the kind of like walk away but near him, and he goes like, I love this variation of the Viennesian bum.
Yeah. Yeah, because the poet, he says, I have a question for you. Give me a word, I'll write you a poem, and then you can see if it's worth anything to you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a classic thing. You'll see like in larger cities anyway, people with like typewriters on the corner kind of doing that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the word that they choose is pretty funny. It's milkshake, which is their own little in-joke. That's a callback to something that they had earlier to, an experience that they
when
and
she
only
calls him out. Yeah.
No, absolutely, she calls him out. That's probably when I like Celine the most, is when she's showing that she's not gullible. She's a romantic, but she knows Jesse. And so the poem gets returned, and the final line, I believe, leads up to that phone conversation. I thought that was very good, because the line is, "Don't you know me by now?"
Mm-hmm.
And they've had perhaps 6 hours together, something like that.
Yeah.
Of, sustained personal contact, just talking about their ideas. And yeah, a lot of it is performative, I would say. But it is still their own thoughts. And it's just interesting to see the kind of intimacy that they've got already after such a short time.
Yeah. You don't see those kinds of bumps in Texas. You just don't. It's I don't know where.
No, you do not.
No, you didn't.
It's too hot.
I don't know where Linklater got that idea, but it was pretty good. So they go to the little cafe where they have the phone conversation, and then they go to probably my favorite conversation, that like inner conversation that they have in the movie, and that's when they're playing pinball. And they're talking about their previous relationships. I like how also Celine is like the first person who asked like, so do you have a girlfriend? Like they've been together this whole time, and she still puts it forward like this is just like a little parenthesis in our lives, but other than this, like outside of this, like what's up? And she doesn't.
Yeah.
And the fun part I think is that I think disregarding what he would say, she would have the same reaction. Like even if he had said like, yeah, I have a girlfriend, like I don't think she would have reacted any differently. Same with him to
Oh
her.
no,
Yeah.
no, I don't. I agree. I don't think that she would have either.
Yeah.
And I think that subtly, because the other thing that I think this movie's fairly good at, like with the symbolism, I think subtly you can see kind of like the changing attitudes toward each other, because I mean, obviously, when you meet someone and you're interested in them, one of the things that you're going to find a way to ask is there anyone else?
Yeah.
I think that this is kind of another turning point. They're a little bit more serious about each other. So, yeah, it's natural to say, are you unoccupied?
Yeah. Is someone else parked here? No. No. I don't know. It's funny. It's funny because that scene, which I love the back and forth of them with the pinball machine and talking.
I love how bad they are at it.
Well, that brings a question: Are they letting the other win or not? Like, it's a super like dumb thing, but kind of I wouldn't be surprised, because then in the third one, they that becomes an argument. Like, oh, I let him win, and they're like, you let me win? Like, what? Yeah, and
they were keeping score. I had no idea.
Yeah, and I don't know. I like those scenes. The when he tells a story about this girlfriend that was in Madrid and how they ended up breaking up, so he ends up buying that pass to go, and how she's going there, how she's moving from school to school and stuff. I think that's my favorite part of the movie, when they're just going back and forth, and also because whenever I see a pinball in Linklater, I just go back to my favorite Linklater movie, which is Everybody Wants Some, and there's a great scene at an arcade where it specifically starts with, I think it's the same pinball machine. Because that's...
I'll have to check that movie out then.
Dude, the small part of this is Everybody Wants Some. It's like the most underrated Linklater film. It's the one that made the least money. It's the one that people talk about the least. It's one of his most recent, and I love it. It's I think Fernie might have mentioned it in the review, but it's a spiritual sequel to Dazed and Confused. So it's Dazed and Confused, but in the 80s, and it's in college, and it's like the 3 days. It's this guy going to a college in Texas. They don't say which one, but we all know which one it is. And
yeah, there's only one. Come on. Yeah. Sorry, Aggie.
And howdy. So he gets to college, and he's in the school baseball team, and he's moving into this house, and there's 2 houses where the whole team is going to live. And the whole movie, it's just the 3 days before college starts, and it's just them partying the whole 3 days. That's the whole movie. And it is glorious. When I tell you that this movie is glorious, I'm telling you, it's the broiest movie that ever broed, and I love it so much. Yeah.
Well,
so yeah, if you ever
that
get a
sounds
chance,
interesting.
Yeah, because I want to review
it. Yeah, kind of wish you'd gotten me for that one instead of this one, because that sounds pretty fun.
We can still make it. We can still do it. It's still possible. Yeah.
Yeah, we're Celine and Jesse. We can still meet up 6 months later.
In a way, haven't we been this entire time? Like, I say something, you just say whatever you want to hear, and we just go back and forth. We're living the movie, man.
Oh no, no, we are arguing about the movie.
Were you close with your grandmother?
Oh, I still am. Okay. Thank God. But our arguing about the movie is exactly like Jesse's public access idea.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, one other thing I love about the pinball scene is that, again, this is kind of subtle, but it explains a lot of Jesse's behavior. I mean, because he's kind of just been an asshole, Something nice will happen, and he'll just, shit all over it. Yeah. But he's fresh off of a breakup. That's why, he's saying, all this, all these things against love, all these things against, like, these things will never last. People end up lying to each other. That's the only way that they end up together, or they stay together over the long term. Well, I mean, obviously he's feeling that, right? Because he had his heart broken, like, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
I love these character moments. Yeah, I love these character moments that Linklater puts in, because they aren't, over the top or anything, but they give really nice explanations for why people are acting the way that they are.
Yeah. And also, I like how, I think Celine kind of like appreciates that moment, and kind of like even though she was already already worked like with him in that moment. I think that scene helps her see more of him in that scene, and helps her kind of move on to the next few scenes, which is when they decide to eventually, boink, in the park.
Well, the thing of it is also because they'd had a sort of fight earlier on where she said that if she had to pick something that she didn't like about him, it would basically be the fact that he's, incredibly cynical, that he can't just like take something nice.
Yeah.
I think that this is the moment where she kind of understands why that is and then can sympathize enough to get them to said boinking.
Yeah. And that's why I feel like you can say a lot about this movie. You can say a lot about the chemistry. You can say about the acting. You cannot say this about pacing. I think the pacing in this movie is top notch. I think just the way that they carry from one scene to the next, it's special. It really is. I think it's because like I said, it's very hard to not think, okay, what would I do in that situation? But it's very easy to just look at them and be like, okay, yeah, the next thing that they're doing makes sense. It makes sense that they're doing that. It's like the natural turn of things, which leads to a very, very fun conversation they have in the second movie where they go like, wait, did we have sex? Did we? Did we not? And because she goes like, we didn't. And he goes like, we did. I remember the brand of condom. We did. And it's just those scenes end up just being really nice. And that's when they eventually like wake up the next morning and they go like, oh yeah, we didn't go to the play.
Well, one thing that I do love in the run-up to that as well is that they go to a bar, right? Yeah. They each have their assigned roles. Celine is going to steal 2 glasses for them. Jesse is going to somehow get his hands on a bottle of wine, and then they're going to go to the park, right? And so, and the thing that I love too is kind of the role reversal, right? You know, Celine is the romantic. You'd think that she'd be the one in charge of like charming the bartender. Jesse is supposed to be like the cynic, more pragmatic person. You think that he'd be up to steal something, but Celine very casually just like puts the glasses in her bag.
Yeah.
Whereas Jesse has to be the one to convince the bartender about the merits of love.
He's trying to appeal in the romantic in the bartender.
And I appreciate that. I appreciate that because it's a good character moment that shows, you know, the effect that these two people can have on each other, maybe. Mm-hmm. The other thing too is like there's a good conversation. You know, at this point, because they are kind of, you know, getting closer, they are, you know, letting their walls down a little bit. They're more interesting to watch, and the conversation that they have when they're lying down in the park, you know, it's about sleeping together, obviously. But it's also about how they feel about each other. Because Celine will even say, you know, I don't want to sleep with you because it's going to make me miss you too much. And there's always that tension in this movie. You know, are they going to stay in touch? Are they not? You know, it's the 90s. I don't know if phones had been invented back then. You know, it'd be very hard.
Yes, phones, just not our phones. They were bricks, man.
Definitely not our phones. Yeah. You know, talk on the Nokia for a couple hours, it's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's that tension, and I think that the scene in the park really helps build that up as well.
Definitely. So after that, we have like a very nice scene when they're just kind of sitting there, just taking in the morning, and we get like a really nice shot of Vienna, and then they have to go to the train station, airport, no, train, yes.
Train and then airport.
And then airport, yeah. And here's the scene where like before the movie ends, like literally like a couple of minutes before the movie ends, like they finally like both break down. It's kind of like what I think is going to happen when the world ends, where we're all going to stand tall, and then the last second we're just going to be like, "Fuck, I'm scared," you know. It's kind of like
that's not true at all. I'm going to be scared from the very beginning.
It's kind of like that last day in Majora's Mask, where like the town is finally like, "Oh fuck, we're gonna die." Like it's the moon is right there. I hope at least one person. I hope at least one person appreciates that reference. So sorry, I Morty'd there for a second. Thank you. Yeah, so they're there, and they're finally like, you know what, fuck it, I don't want to. I don't want to just let this be like a one night thing. Like, let's. They don't exchange any information, and they stupidly said, we'll just meet here in 6 months. Like, yeah, to this exact date, December 16th, I think. They mentioned.
Yeah, at 6 p.m.
Yeah, 6 p.m.
Platform 9. And the thing of it is, I mean, that's the emotional kind of climax of the whole thing,
It
because
definitely is, yeah.
all throughout they've been, trying to be very cynical people, very mature people, like, oh, long distance will never work, love is a lie, whatever. But on the inside, they've been feeling this about each other, and it's been growing and developing and giving them like actual depth as people, which crazy, right? But they're able to get past all like the self-serving nonsense and all the lies and all the performative stuff that they'd given each other, and they could just kind of almost break down on the platform, saying, like, I want to see you again. And then she says, I always wanted to see you again. I was hoping you would say something. Which is, it's crazy. And this is true to life too, of course. I mean, the moments that can happen if you're able to be vulnerable in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jesus, I fucking love this movie. There's just so much like going in there. I mean, it appeals definitely to the romantic in me. It appeals that I would have hated to have seen this movie when it first came out and have to wait 9 years to see what happened. And movies are not like how they are now, where like even before the movie came out, we know there's going to be a sequel. This is why no one enjoys Spider-Man dying in Endgame. But there's so much of a mystique going on there, because the movie just ends with like the two of them waving goodbye at each other and just ends, like no to be continued, no nothing. Like, we could have very easily not gotten another one of these and just have this be a one-off. But the fact that it keeps going, it's also what kind of makes it special. The fact that it continues in real time is also what makes it special. That you can see the wrinkles in each other's faces in the next movie is also what makes it what makes it pretty special. There's just so much concentrated chemistry and romanticism in this, in just a very, very small budgeted film. That I think is a testament that it keeps existing, that people keep talking about it and it keeps coming up. It's definitely time.
Before sunset. I'll let Eddie or Fernie have that.
Yeah.
We're talking about Before Sunrise right now.
Yeah.
And, no, but joking aside, I do want to talk about Linklater's vision of the end, right?
Okay.
Because you have both of them walking along, right? Jesse leaves the platform. Celine gets to her car, and she, eventually looks like she's about to sleep because, they've been up at night being homeless. But after, and interspersed with it, he has these shots of the places that they've been.
Yeah.
And in daylight, I mean, they look much different. I would say that Vienna, I've heard and I've seen, the beautiful city. I wouldn't necessarily get that from the way that, the way that it's shot, especially in this segment. I mean, you see like the empty table outside, in this like dull light as the sun comes up. You see like the park where they were, and there's a vagrant going around, and she just like sees their trash. I think that, I don't know if Linklater had this Amy obsession for the entirety of the movie. I don't know if he had been planning this ahead of time, but I think that it's interesting how you can kind of pull either ending from how Before Sunrise ends. I mean, it's the classic The Graduate ending, right? Where, these two kids, they get off, they go away from a planned wedding, they elope together, they're in the bus riding away from their families. They've just, overturned a huge, they've just, overturned their entire family pretty much. And then they just look at each other, and the light kind of dies from them a little bit, because there's the feeling of, well, what the hell do we do now? That's the same sense that I get from the ending of Before Sunrise. And I think it's one of the best parts about the movie.
Yeah. See, weird. It's weird because I see the ending kind of hopeful. When the film ends, I 100% believe that both of them will be there in 6 months. And maybe that's just the hopeful romantic in me, but the realist in me says like, oh fuck no, like they're gonna forget about each other in a couple months, or maybe not. But the thing that the movie's trying to appeal is to that part of every person. This is why Linklater said before, if someone doesn't want to see a movie about two people talking the whole time, then we're not making a movie for them. I think it's definitely for that crowd. And I'm not trying to gatekeep the movie. I'm not saying, oh, it's not for you. I'm saying it's for me, definitely.
You're lucky that Linklater would even perform for you bastards.
I know.
No, but so the thing that I would say is that, yeah, this is a really powerful kind of display of ambiguity. I mean, they even talk about it in the movie itself. You know, everything is very intense, very passionate, it's very powerful in the moment. But, you know, a week later, when reality has set in, and the other person isn't there anymore, and you're not in Austria, you're just studying for your next class in whatever major that she had, the luster fades. And it fades to a really weird extent. I want to ask you this, Chema. Did you ever go to, like, summer camp?
Never.
Yeah, me either. I was a loser. But anyway, but I did go on a couple of, like a church retreat once or twice, or, like, basically like a business-centered like meetup in another city. And it's the same principle. You meet a bunch of people who, you know, have more or less the same interests as you, and you learn each other's names really quickly, and you're subject to a bunch of bonding experiences, one right after the other, and you don't get a lot of sleep, so you always stay kind of like emotional, but like emotional in a positive way, because they keep things very like upbeat and cheerful. Yeah. And so, yeah, you have these really deep bonds with people, and then you say, you know, after this is done, you know, we're going to stay in contact. We're going to, you know, we're going to write, we're going to call. But reality, you know, you normally sets in. You get back into the normal routine, people fall out of touch. And so tapping into that and like the wistfulness surrounding it, I think is one of the best things that Linklater has done with Before Sunrise.
Yeah. Well, I think that about wraps it up for Sunrise. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add. I think that's a pretty good note to end on, in my opinion.
Just that I think that Linklater does a great job of having their interaction be a relationship in miniature, because they even do things that are kind of like developed relationship material, like where they go back and they talk about what they were thinking when they first saw each other.
Yeah.
You know, and all of that, it's incredibly satisfying to see there. I think that it starts kind of slow. I think that Jesse and Celine aren't necessarily, you know, with the best chemistry or, you know, the most enjoyable to watch at the beginning. But I think that this movie winds up in a very good place. I would give it a B-.
Okay. Well, I love it. I love this movie. Like, it's one of my, like, I have a list of like movies that I watch when I'm either having like a bad day or something. This is one of the movies on the list. Lower than Everybody Wants Some, but definitely on the list. I like their chemistry. I like how they're kind of mismatched, but also kind of perfectly matched. I like the conversations. I like the back and forth. I like when they start to break down each other's walls. I like their interactions with the people around them. I like how they kind of reflect very real people. And I like how I do like how the story wraps up. And I like even better how it continues. But that would be a conversation for another day. This movie to me is a 9 out of 10. It's just, it fulfills everything that it wants to be, and I think it does it in a great way. To me, there's I can start this movie halfway, 20 minutes in, an hour in, I'm hooked, and I always go back to it. Yeah, so that's Before Sunrise. Do me a favor, Alex. Why don't you watch Everybody Wants Some? I know Fernie has seen it, and I'd love to have like a three of us tackling the movie. I'd love to do that.
Yeah, fuck yeah, I'll do that. That's great.
Hell yeah. We're going to have to, this is going to end up being just Linklater month, isn't it? Like,
why not? It's August.
It's August. Why not? It's back to school time for some people. If you're listening to us on YouTube, you can follow us on any of our links down below.
If you're listening to us via podcast, please subscribe. We'd greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us. If you'd like to hear more about our thoughts on movies, go to therollback.net. I've been Chema.
And I've been Alex. And this was The Rollback. So, Chema, same time next 6 months?
It's a date.